It's time to talk Atlanta Falcons football on the Our Lads Football Network for the OFN today. And anytime we talk Atlanta Falcons football, that means we talk to the Falcoholics one and only Kevin Knight. How's it going, Kevin?
Good. Happy to be back on. It's been a little bit here as we've gotten into the depths of the off season. So
yes, it's not like the draft just happened. Matter of fact, we've already had rookie mini and mini, and now we're almost at the point where everybody's going to be going home soon and not coming back until training camp. But that hopefully will be pretty quick. Usually is.
Yeah. We try to fill the time with something else during that time of year, folks. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, so. That's the dead time of the year for the NFL is the waiting game between OTAs and
mandatory mini camp like mid-June and then nothing.
Yeah. So that's it is what it is. But at least they give us the draft and free agency. Can't have it all, and we need a break. As it is anyway, we got to play catch up, and got to go on vacation and have some free time. So, how's everything going on at the Falcoholic?
It's good. We're getting geared up for another season here, another off season in the books. Had another great draft party during the NFL draft, and it's been fun to connect with people after the draft. And there's definitely more hope, I would say, around the Falcons than there has been since maybe 2018, 2017, that sort of era. So it's nice to potentially be coming out of the darkness here, because as you probably remember from our previous conversations, the Falcons have not had a winning record since, I believe, 2018. So, it would be nice if we could fix that this year.
Yeah, and it started, as far as the draft is concerned, with a running back. And so, I'm really interested to know the reaction and also what the probabilities were regarding a running back, because obviously we talked and that had a lot to do with it. But, we had our draft. We had several mock drafts. In my first one, I went ahead with Robinson. And then in the last one, Dave Syvertson, our lead scout at Our Lads, went with Robinson when he had Atlanta. And it just seemed like such a natural fit, even though I think that from the outside of Atlanta, I'm not so sure many people thought that was something that Atlanta needed to do after their rookie had such a quality first season, and there's other issues on the team. Maybe you've already found your number one, that kind of thing. But knowing how much Arthur Smith values the running game, it just seemed like a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we suspected was coming based on where the Falcons were drafting, based on the players who were expected to be on the board when the Falcons were picking. This is a team that has made it clear that positional value is not something they consider very highly. They're looking more at the player, the fit in the offense, more esoteric things, right, than just the little like, oh, is this position worth X or Y pick? They're more concerned about the talent, and that can get you in trouble if you go too far off the rails doing that. But I think they were pretty confident that Bijan was the best player left at 8. I think the other players they were considering, Tyree Wilson, he goes off the board just before they pick. The other players, maybe Devon Witherspoon, who the Lions ended up going with earlier. Or wait, it was the Seahawks. Excuse me. Seahawks went with Witherspoon. I thought the Lions were going to go with Witherspoon. They didn't even get a chance.
That was the first little surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So those were, and then Paris Johnson apparently was another guy
they had
little
surprise.
Rated up there, and he ends up going too. So all that considered, it seems like the Bijan was the clear best player left. Obviously they probably would have considered a wide receiver. There just really weren't any that were that highly thought of in this class. And of course, I don't think they viewed any of the other pass rushers or offensive linemen, even Skoronski, as like worthy of that 8th pick. So I think it made a ton of sense for them. They clearly don't. They're gonna they need to use Bijan in a very creative way, and they need to maximize what he can give them to make that pick worth it. But he's such a rare talent that you sort of, I mean, he's the odds-on favorite to be Offensive Rookie of the Year,
Yeah,
and you
right.
got people complaining about value on the pick.
Yeah.
So, it, to me, it's like it's important to get really good players, and I think it gets lost in the wash a lot that like people are like, oh well, you could have got a more valuable position. Well, I'd rather get the guy I know is going to be good than reaching for somebody at a more
Absolutely.
valuable position. I mean, 50% of first rounders just bust.
Yeah.
So I mean, just how about we go get the double with a nice Bijan pick, and look, he has the potential to be more than that.
That's
This
right.
is one of the top 3 players in the whole class. So it's hard for me to find fault with that. Even though it's not something that a lot of teams would be willing to do these days. Maybe more teams should have been willing to do it. We'll see. We'll see soon.
Well, look, I think we are already seeing more teams go back to running the football a little bit. It's not a lot, but we're starting to see, and it's going to happen. You just can't the passing game is great and all that, but you have to run the football. And when you have a run first offense like Atlanta has, it just makes a complete load of sense because you can't just have one running back. You have to have 2 young running backs. Now they have 2 young, talented running backs, and by the way, Robinson too. I even though we went to Texas, it's like he's I just wonder if he was, I don't know, maybe if he was on Alabama or if he was on Ohio State, whether or not more people would be like, wow, he's awesome. That was a great pick, that kind of deal. Enough of this value crap, because I don't think they realize how good this kid could be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Texas threw the ball to him enough, clearly, and I think that the Texas offensive line was pretty hit or miss, so that sort of limited his production, especially in like against a game against Alabama. I think he only had like 30 yards, and he just was getting annihilated in the backfield. But he did have those 3 catches for 80 yards. So yeah, when he's bottled up in the run game, just start throwing to him. So he's just such a fun player. He's just his path to being a good NFL starter or better than that is so clear. It's so easy to see, and he's in the perfect team to try to take advantage.
Yep.
Because I don't think the Falcons would hesitate to run the ball 30 plus times a game, and they did last year certainly. So, it's what they want to do. Will it work to get them to a winning record this year? I think so. Can it do more than that? Can they rise above what the Titans were at their peak, which was a team that was competing for the conference championship, but that couldn't quite get it done? And this is more of a meta Falcons conversation, I guess. But I don't think the Falcons are trying to be the Ryan Tannehill Titans, which that team, to be fair, was one of the most efficient offenses we've seen in recent memory and all these things. But I think that's that's just where they want to start.
Sure.
They're building the ideal version of what that team was. And, you look at the weapons that the Falcons are potentially trotting out there, and you look at all these stars they've assembled. They got Drake London, they got Kyle Pitts, now they got Bijan Robinson and a lot of other really good role players, and Tyler Algier and Jonnu Smith, they traded a 7th-round pick for, who had 8 touchdowns with Arthur Smith in their final year together. That's what got him that big contract. Everyone gets hung up on the Falcons wide receiver depth, except the Falcons, because they just ignored it. They were like, well, we'll sign Matt Collins, we'll sign Scotty Miller, and we'll bring in a cajillion UDFAs. And then a bunch of just sort of back end veterans. They don't care about their wide receiver depth. They want to know, are you big? Can you run block? Can you play special teams? Okay, that's all we got. They've got their star in Drake London, and that's as much as they were able to do this year. They weren't really able to get that secondary piece there. But they do have Kyle Pitts too, so it's
yes,
maybe wide receiver it's not that important for this team.
There you go.
you got those.
That's
two,
right.
so.
Falcons have a weapon that most teams don't have, and that does count obviously in the passing game. So, and again, you can't rebuild a championship team overnight. So it is what it is. It's definitely heading in the right direction. And it's going to be exciting. Were there fans at all who really liked Algier and what he did last year? Were there fans at all that were a little bit, I upset or not so happy with the pick and felt that, hey man, I really liked Algier and I think he was good enough. We should have used it still on something else.
Yeah, there's a lot of people like that, both inside the Falcons, but a lot outside. I mean, obviously, anyone who owned Algier in Dynasty is going to be upset. But that's how it goes sometimes.
Right.
So I think it's one of these things where you don't let the good be the enemy of the great, right? Like that you've got Algier, but you need two running backs, and it's become clear that you can't. Cordarrelle Patterson can't be a workhorse.
No.
He just can't. Like, he can do it for a game or two. He can get you through, and I think, if the Falcons need him, he's there. He can do it, but he's a guy that you want getting like 5 to 6 touches, and maybe returning kicks if we still return kicks in the year 2023. And he's a complementary piece now, so you needed another guy to take the load with Algier. And look, the history is clear. When you give guys 20 plus touches a game, like, they break down.
Yep.
Whether it's in a couple seasons, whether it's in one season. I think it's beneficial for both Bijan and Algier to have that workload split. And I think you can do it very cleverly. Bijan's maybe one weakness is that he doesn't run with the most power. Obviously, his contact balance is really good. He doesn't often just bowl, guys over in the run game, though. And that's something that Algier absolutely does.
Yes.
So they sort of complement each other there. Yep. Maybe you use Algier more for short yardage, and you can also make Algier your grinder. So let's say everything works out the way you want, and you have a lead late that you're trying to protect. That's when you give Algier 15 carries. There
you go.
Just let him grind teams down. You don't have to put Bijan out there. So that's what this team wants to do. They're going to run the ball. I would say there's no question they're going to be top 5 in rushing attempts this year, even though they're probably going to pass more than they did last year. That's why they made the pick, and people just have to get over that. I think Algier is still going to be a valuable fantasy asset. I mean, he's not going to be an RB1 most likely, but I mean, RB2 in one of the most run-heavy offenses in the NFL.
And like you said, short yardage.
I mean,
maybe he'll get some additional goal line.
He's definitely going to vulture touchdowns. Like, maybe Cordarrelle Patterson's going to be our vulture this year, but just put him in for goal line. He seems to always find the end zone.
Wow.
Yeah. But so I think it's something they needed to do. Did they need to spend the 8th overall pick? I don't think so. I mean, I think they could have waited and got Zach Charbonnet or something like that a little bit later on, but I don't think that was going to give you the pop that Bijan is. I mean, Bijan potentially gives you the best run game in the NFL. Yeah. So, people like to talk a lot about, they didn't need to do it. Well, like, it's not just about need sometimes. Sometimes it's about putting the best possible offense you can on the field, and there was no receiver, there was no edge rusher.
Yep.
I would say not even an offensive lineman that is going to give this offense the boost that Bijan will. Like, he will be the biggest possible addition they could have made in the draft to get this offense further ahead in terms of the needle. Like, no one other than Bijan would do it. So,
it's sort of like when
the
you're
right
building
long-term play. We'll see, right? But I mean, for the next 2 to 3 years, I don't know that there's a player they could have drafted that's going to get them more wins than Bijan Robinson. I mean, when the dust clears.
Yeah, it's I go back to like when I remember when Dallas was putting together their historic team, their last one, and it was the way they built it. It was so like obvious, they get their quarterback, and then they have their running back Emmitt Smith, and then they have their receiver Michael Irvin, and then you could even throw in Jay Novacek and all these other guys on offense, especially with the offensive line. But the point is when you look at Atlanta now, you can go, okay, we're building something here. We've got our 1A superstar caliber running back. We've got our superstar caliber receiver, and we've got our superstar caliber tight end. There's not a lot of teams out there that have those 3 guys at this stage of their careers. There just isn't. And because especially with the tight end position. So to have all 3 of them, now it's a matter of whether or not, again, like you were saying, because I think the difference between being that Tennessee team and being maybe more than that is going to be the quarterback position. It's going to be whether or not Ritter is going to be just, and again, maybe a Teddy Hill is fine, but if they think they need more than that and they want to go out and get another quarterback in next year's draft, then that's what we'll talk about next year. But this is going to give Ritter a really good chance to be the man now.
Yeah, I mean, he's got every opportunity. They did not bring in competition for him specifically. They even told Taylor Heineke when he signed that he was going to be the backup. So they have hard committed to Desmond Ritter, which I think has infuriated a lot of people, and it's really funny. But look, that's what they're doing. He's going to get a chance. And the thing is, if he doesn't perform, then they're not bound to him in any way. They could go draft a quarterback next year or trade for one or whatever they want.
Yep.
But clearly they want to see, at least before they do that, if the guy they already have can do something. And I think, you look at what he showed last year and, the way the intangibles are there, and you look at his college career, like everyone dunks on him because he's a 3rd round pick and doesn't, he was the 2nd quarterback drafted, probably should have been a late 1st, early 2nd round pick in a very unusual quarterback draft. There's no reason he can't be an NFL starter. We'll see how good of an NFL starter he is, but I think, Chris Sims putting him as the 40th best quarterback in the NFL. He was better than a lot of guys in the 4 games he played last year that were put ahead of him. I think that's just insulting, to be honest. So
he's probably used to it.
No, yeah. He had this great comment in one of his early press conferences where someone asked him if he'd heard the criticism of the Falcons for not drafting a quarterback, and he was like, "Yeah, I do have a TV in my house, so yes, I have heard that." So he's just this is a guy that's used to that. He had to work his way up in college too. Won the job as a true freshman, and
that's
the rest is history. So, didn't quite do that in Atlanta. Now, depending on who you ask, you probably should have, at least earlier than he was put in. I think that may have been enough to get the Falcons to the playoffs. But then we wouldn't have Bijan, right?
There you go.
Hey, you can't change it. So we're here. We are where we are,
yes.
And I'm excited to see Ritter. I think he will be fine. Can he be more than fine?
That's
that I
the
don't
thing.
know. But I would love that. He seems like an awesome dude, and I think he's got the physical talent. The arm strength isn't elite, but it's good enough. Very athletic, good build. Smart leader. He's checked a lot of the boxes, so he just got to put it all together. A lot of guys check those boxes. The main difference is he was drafted in the 3rd round. A lot of these guys are drafted in the 1st round, and I don't know that those. I would have had Ritter above Will Levis, for sure.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, so it was kind of. So I just want to see what he can do. Before we dunk on him too much.
Again, you can't put it all together in one off season, and at least it's not like, well, now we have to go back to Marcus Mariota.
Yeah,
it's not that. It's, hey, we got a young quarterback. Let's see what he can do. Yeah. There's hope there. And
this isn't Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield, okay?
No. That's true. Yeah. All right. So then the other thing that's positive is that we've talked about how the offensive line has started to come along, and now they really solidify the makeup of the offensive line with the Bergeron pick, because and as David talked about for a good month or so on these offensive linemen, that there were several, including Bergeron, who would be perfect tackles in college to swing inside to guard. And there's, by all indications, he's going to be this day one starter at left guard. And that offensive line, it's taken a couple of years, but it's looking right now on paper to be, above average and one of the better looking offensive lines to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential in that group. I sort of thought they, early in the offseason that center might be a place they look to upgrade, but they seem to be really confident in Drew Dahlman, who was, an average, solid starter last year, really good run blocker. So they seem confident. This is going to be his 2nd year starting now. So, I don't think it's unreasonable to see if you can have a little bit more there. They ended up going more for the guard, which they didn't address at all in free agency. In fact, they ended up not re-signing their previous guard from last year, Elijah Wilkinson. And I love Matthew Bergeron. He's up here in Syracuse with me, so somebody I've been able to see play before. So that was cool. And at the Senior Bowl, they had him move to guard. I thought he crushed it early on against some really good competition. He's known as, I think he's bilingual. He speaks French and English. He is French Canadian, I believe, originally. So super smart guy. Everyone seems to love his attitude. He earned a starting tackle spot as a true freshman who had never played football in the U.S. before. coming out of Canada at Syracuse, which, the ACC isn't what it used to be necessarily,
Sure.
but it's still a Division I
Yep.
school to basically come on to and win a starting job as a true freshman offensive lineman. That is really hard to do. So I have a lot of confidence in Bergeron to be the week 1 left guard starter. Obviously, there will be growing pains. I mean,
Sure.
the guy's going to be playing a new position. It is the left side. Like, I don't think this is a Jalen Mayfield situation, and I think the Falcons learned from that mistake.
Yeah.
In case people don't remember, the Falcons drafted Jalen Mayfield in 2021.
Yes.
That draft in the 3rd round. He was a college tackle, didn't have a lot of experience. They wanted to convert him to guard. Instead of doing that, because they had injuries in camp at tackle, they made him play right tackle, which was his natural position. And then like a week before the season, they tried to switch him to left guard after an injury. And then he, had one of the worst left guard seasons of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, poor guy. So
Sure.
I think they're going to let Bergeron play left guard from the get-go.
Yeah.
He is already playing left guard in camp. He's the second team left
That's
guard. So I think they've learned their lesson from that one.
And he's going to have Jake Matthews right next to him, and
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
valuable. Yeah.
So yeah, I love the pick. I know there's the thought that, maybe the Falcons do go after Ben Jones if he still wants to play, and maybe they're not satisfied with Drew Dahlman. Ben Jones still was a good center last year. He'll
Sure.
be 34 this year, but so that could be a potential reunion opportunity. But yeah, I think the offensive line looks the best it's looked in quite a long time. So especially if Bergeron hits the ground running, they have a really good starting 5, and the big thing is they're all amazing run blockers. So even if the pass protection's average-ish, which is what it was last year for the most part, they are dominant on the ground. And that when you're that good on the ground, it just takes pressure off the pass game to some extent. So as long as they don't get creamed on defense like they did last year, then hopefully they'll be able to utilize their strength of running the ball and limit their opponent's possessions and go for this more bully ball style that we haven't really seen a lot of teams in the NFL embrace recently. I think it's an interesting experiment at the very least. So
And then in the 7th round, one of their picks, they picked up Gwynn from South Carolina. Yep. And do you think that have they already talked about where they're going to play him?
He's a center.
They're going to play him at center.
He's already playing center. Yep, he will be playing center. They're already started. I think in rookie minicamp they put him at center. So he is, I guess, going to be a center guard. Probably, he's trying to do is basically be the center guard backup or one of those
like
interior players. Yeah. And I don't think Hennessy's going anywhere. He's still the first team left guard. Probably will be at least until camp starts. But they can save over $2.7 million from releasing Hennessy. So if Gwynn just blows the doors off the team, I mean, there's a slight chance of that happening, but I don't think I would get rid of that offensive line depth personally. Yeah. So, but they could keep both of them. I mean, that is an option, especially if he takes to center quickly. So they have 2 interior guys they can trust.
Yeah, because that's
it's more swing tackle that's scary. So
yes, that's what I was going to say. Is that's actually the strength of the backups are in the interior, but on the outside, you would have to believe that they would probably pick up a veterans along the line, right? A swing tackle.
I think they probably will. They do have Josh Miles, who the team likes, and they have Ethan Greenidge, who was a Saints rostered player for several years. Didn't end up ever getting live snaps, but he made the roster, I think, 2 or 3 years. So they have some developmental guys they like, and they signed that XFL tackle, Barry Wesley. So maybe there's something there. But yeah, I mean, I think they're probably waiting right now to see how this shakes out, see if any of these guys look like they're swing tackle material, and if not, they'll go grab one of the tackles. But there's so many available right now. I mean,
no rush.
There's not really any rush to do it. Yeah, so I think they'll give the young guys, a week or 2 in camp to see, maybe through the first preseason game, and then if it's disastrous, they go get one of these guys. So that's probably what they're going to do.
And what you like about both linemen, too, is they're both the 2 rookies. They're both 4-year starters. So that's what you like. Guys that with all of that experience and all of those snaps makes it a lot easier for them to be ready on day 1 as a rookie. All right. So let's move on to defense with the other 3 picks. And the first one was Zach Harrison, the 3rd rounder from Ohio State. I think one of the biggest issues with Harrison is his consistency, but overall, there's a lot to like. with his athleticism combined with his length. There's he's looking like he's going to be, especially with the guys that they drafted last year, another piece of the depth of some of those young guys, and you're just stacking up. I know it's second and third round guys, but the more of those guys you stack up, the better chances you have that one or two of them will work out, and then maybe you hit the home run at some point in the next year or two. But it's good that if you have it until you hit that home run, it's good that the Falcons are at least adding some of these second and third round guys like Zach Harrison.
Yeah, and I think they know that the edge room needed to be addressed in a serious way. Like they knew that, but they weren't going to reach on it over guys that they liked more. They just weren't going to do it. And this was a deep edge class. That was one of the strengths of this class, I would say, is just there were a lot of good edge players. Good ones lasted into the fourth round, I would say, in this year's class for sure. So, picking up Zach Harrison in the third round, about where I had him, I think it's a great pick for them. Makes a lot of sense. They don't need him to play a lot early. I think Zach Harrison's kind of underrated. I mean, he was inconsistent as a finisher mostly. Had a lot of pressures, but a low sack number. So a little bit odd. May have just been a little bad luck. But again, that arm length is crazy, over 36-inch arms. He's 6'5.5", 274 pounds. You look at what the Falcons brought in with Calais Campbell. It's obvious that this is their future Calais Campbell. This is the guy they want to play that big end role. Okay. And if he could become something even remotely close to Calais Campbell in his prime, that would obviously be a massive win. But even if he's just a solid starter, I think he's got the traits like crazy. You see guys with his traits get drafted late in the first round some years. You look at Peyton Turner last year, he had a lot more production at a lower level competition, but like in terms of measurables, athleticism, I mean, Zach Harrison's similar style of player, and you get him, 2 rounds later. So I think it's a great, like high reward type of pick. Mm-hmm. And I think, you need a backup for Calais Campbell. You don't really have a lot of that style of player on your roster, just him. And these guys are going to be big ends for the Falcons on base downs. And now you've got a second one waiting in the wings to take over later and, provide that depth. If you're going up against a big rushing offense, maybe you activate both Harrison and Calais Campbell and make them run against those two monsters on the outside. So,
all right, that's so basically what you're saying is that Ebiketie and Malone and Dupree and Carter as the veterans, they're more going to be like the edge rushers for this defense. Yep. Harrison is going to play up front.
Yeah, I think both Calais Campbell and Harrison are going to play like 5 tech.
Okay.
Maybe 4-eye, depending on the package or whatever. And we've seen Campbell play inside too, and I think Harrison has that flexibility. Yep. But Campbell said he signed here because the Falcons wanted to play him at edge, and he wanted to play edge.
Okay.
He thought his best football he played in Jacksonville, which is where, of course, he had his record-setting season. When he was playing actual defensive end, like 5 tech. Okay. He's mostly, for the Ravens, mostly played inside, or 3-4 defensive end. So he's going to play outside for the Falcons. That's what he said. So, we'll see. maybe he has a little late career resurgence, getting to play the position he loves, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
But I think Zach Harrison's going to be similar. They're going to be that sort of 5 tech presence, maybe 4-eye, depending. And then you've got your more stand-up focused guys, Carter, Ebiketie, yep. Bud Dupree, D'Angelo Malone, all that other sort of archetype of like the smaller, faster guys that can stand up, maybe cover a little bit. But yeah, they're probably going to keep six edge rushers.
You need them
on the roster. So, it's been a while since I had 6 edge rushers that I could even list and remember their names for the Falcons. Yeah. So I'm not upset about this course of action. But everyone gets caught up. It's like, oh, they didn't draft a star guy. They didn't sign any crazy guy. Bud Dupree, who they signed off the street for a couple $1 million, probably would have been their best pass rusher last year. So, I mean, and this is a guy that's maybe going to be their 4th pass rusher this year, 3rd, 4th. So, they've dramatically remade the room. It's not necessarily full of stars, but I think it's full of those like 2nd and 3rd tier guys that they maybe had 1 of last year. So, like, now they've got 4 or 5. So it's going to, the floor, I think, of the whole defense, including that edge room, is so much higher this year. You look, basically across the board, they've just added pieces. They've added starters on the interior. They added multiple guys on the edge, at cornerback. They brought in Jesse Bates at safety to just, really elevate the back end of the defense. Caden Ellis, I think, super underrated at linebacker.
Yep.
So they've basically added at least a starter everywhere. And the potential's there for the defense to finally do something. So that'd be nice.
Well, yeah, it would be. And it's, again, it doesn't happen overnight, but that's why we're in total agreement. Again, you until you get the star guy, and you don't even know, it could be on your roster, but until you get the star guy, you have to build the depth, and that's exactly what they've been doing this offseason. And we knew that was the case with all the money that they had, and it looks like they've done a really good job. And speaking of the defensive backfield, as we close out with the final two picks, both of the DBs they chose were excellent value picks. Matter of fact, I think Clark Phillips might have been one of the top value picks in the entire draft going into fourth round. Yeah. Our lads had him as a second round grade. Even Helms had a fourth round grade, went in the seventh round. But Phillips is the key guy because, this kid was like the leader. He was the main guy, really. And everybody talks about, the front at Utah. They've always had a really good defense there. Under Whittingham, but Phillips was really the star of that defense. And, you just talk about a guy who is a playmaker. He's got the elite tools, everything you're looking for. And is he now, do you think week one, opening day, they expect and want him to be the number one nickelback?
I guess it's really, they're in a situation where they can sort of let it play out. I think Clark Phillips is going to find his way onto the field, whether it's inside or outside at some point this year. I think it's going to be really hard to keep him off the field. I sort of think he's probably going to be the cornerback 4 to open the season. So he'll be the dime back and he'll be the primary backup, probably both inside and outside.
Okay. Unless he has a great camp.
If he has a great camp, then yeah. It's certainly within his realm of outcomes that he's the nickel starter. I would not be shocked at all if he starts in the slot. They do really like Mike Hughes, who they did sign this year. His deal's mostly guaranteed, so he's going to make it. But personally, I thought Mike Hughes played better outside, with the Chiefs than he has played inside. But they apparently like him in the slot, so they're going to try to play him again on the inside. They have D. Alford, the CFL star from last year, who made the roster and was a primary depth piece. They like him in the slot too. So, it just depends on how that shakes out. But yeah, I think Clark Phillips is going to be a starter for this team very soon. They have Jeff Okudah. And that's another guy. It's like if this guy sniffs what he was,
give him a second chance.
Out,
yep.
People don't realize, you look at a lot of these moves and you're like, he was hurt, or maybe, he fell in the draft. He's kind of small. He wasn't that great last year. Even a guy like Eddie Goldman, who retired before training camp last year, he chose to come back this year. So now they have a nose tackle, so a lot of these guys are like, these guys, they weren't all at their best last year, but if some of them get back to what they were or reach their potential, you're talking about miraculous transformation of this defense.
There's a lot of talent there now. Yes.
They've brought in just a lot of talent, and not all of it's going to come to fruition. Sure. It never does. Yes. But they've just raised the bar for every spot on the defense for the most part. And they brought the floor up so high. A guy like Clark Phillips, maybe he wins the outside job. I don't know. You try telling him that he's small. He's one of the only guys in college football that could hang with Drake London, and Drake London was, putting on a show as a rookie. So this is a guy who's battle tested. He's played against size.
Love him.
Hasn't hurt him. So, I wouldn't rule out that he's like a DJ Reed type of player at the NFL. He's just a small corner that just keeps playing outside.
Yes.
You just it shouldn't work, but it does.
That's right.
So you just sort of don't argue with it. And I think they'll give him a chance to play outside, especially if they get injuries. I think he's the first guy off the bench. So no matter what happens,
worst case,
they're probably like, okay, Clark, get out there. At some point we'll see him this year, I'm sure.
And that's the thing, when you're small stature, like a Bryce Young. You have to be elite as far as a lot of other things, fundamentals. We won't get into the whole quarterback thing, but that's Phillips. He brings, again, whether it's the fundamentals, the footwork. He's like he's physical and run support. Even like you said, him being small. Why should he be physical and run support? But he is, and that's what you want. And maybe in the NFL, it'll be a lot harder, as it will be, to be physical and run support. But it's like talking about Tank Dell for Houston. It's like, yeah, man, he's so small. How's he going to make it? Well, what's his nickname, man? His nickname's Tank for a reason.
Yeah.
So that's what you have to do. And that's what Clark Phillips brings to the table. He brings elite intangibles to the table is the best way to describe it. That he has to, in order for him not just to be in the NFL, but to be a difference maker in the NFL.
Yep. So. And, there's going to be a lot of man coverage in this Falcons defense now. Phillips has shown he can do it. He's sticky. He's also really good at just jumping routes and stuff like that. Was one of his calling cards in college. So, I think you look at him as a guy that maybe he can create some takeaways. Probably not going to be the biggest plus against the run, but the Falcons are building their front to take on the run and to really handle a lot of the heavy lifting against the run. That's sort of a hallmark of Ryan Nielsen's defense is they want to play with a light box. So they need those defensive linemen and those linebackers that they do have on the field to be really good at stopping the run. And I think they've assembled a group that can do it. So it'll be really interesting to see if, maybe they take a little bit off the plate of some of these secondary players, free them up to potentially, go looking for the football a little bit more, since they're not, called upon to have to carry the load against the run.
Well, what was did they have like an answer or a reason why either Phillips or even Helms, why they were available so late? I'm sure the Falcons were probably very surprisingly happy to see a guy, both of these guys, especially even Helms, to go in the 7th round. I mean, that was just ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was certainly happy to see him there. I wasn't sure they would do it. They did have Mike Hughes, who they paid a little bit of money to. And, I thought with the size, I wasn't really sure the type of corner they were going to go with because they traded for Jeff Okudah. So I was like, oh, are they looking for the bigger corners now or what? But, I'm glad they did it. I think it's the best value pick in the draft. And he's just such a good player. Measurables wise, again, that's why he fell. 29-inch arms, 5'9". He is 185. So at 5'9", that's big. That's really big for 5'9". So he's not like a tiny guy. He just doesn't have the arm length and the height. So that's part of the reason why he's a decent run support player despite the size, is because he's jacked. He's still big. He's just not tall.
And what about Helms? What about?
I like Helms. Yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that they were looking for a depth safety that can be more of a box guy, but it can also play the slot. I think this is a team that's going to like to use a big nickel safety a lot for certain packages. Like I said, they like to go lighter box and have more coverage guys on the field in Ryan Nielsen's defense. So they brought in, DeMarco Helms, who I think can absolutely play that role, played all 3 spots for Alabama. He's physical. He's big. He can bring that run support as well. They also brought in Trey Flowers from the Bengals, who was another one of those specialist big corner safety hybrid type guys who played a lot against tight ends as a specialist. So he's in the mix now too. So yeah, I mean, I a lot of interesting potential for this defense that they've brought. I think it's particularly the secondary. We've seen a lot of sort of specialist type guys. They have a guy for tight ends and Trey Flowers, if he makes the roster, that they can, this is our tight end coverage guy. If you've got a big tight end receiving threat, Trey Flowers is getting out there. So he might be the slot guy, So they've really assembled, I think, a very interesting looking secondary. I'm really interested, especially in training camp. It's going to be fascinating to see where these guys are playing, because I think you look at Trey Flowers and you look at DeMarco Helms and some of these other guys, and it's like, well, some of these guys might line up at corner or they might line up at safety. I don't know where they're going to be, and I think maybe that's the point, right? They just want to keep defenses confused or offenses confused as much as possible.
Yeah, and as you know, they went this route with the secondary a few years back, and it just didn't work. I mean, AJ Terrell is really the only guy standing, but since then, it's like that second wave has come. And, and that second wave starting in 21 is looking a lot better, throwing in the veterans and the rookies and the second year guys. So, but again, it's all promise. And I'm sure there was promise a few years ago as well. But this is a different general manager. It's a different coaching staff. And that's what you just gotta hope, and that's what you do, and at least they've got a chance now, and that's all you can hope for. Is you look at this roster if you're a Falcon fan after this draft and free agency, of course, and say, all right, now we have a chance. We got players now. We got a chance, and in this division, there's no reason that the Falcons can't win the division this year.
Yeah,
and
that's the other thing. Yeah.
So
it's. There's nobody in this division that's scaring you. It seems like the Bucs are actively tanking. The Panthers, I think, have long-term potential. I do like that coaching staff, but it's gonna be a lot for them to get back on track. Completely new scheme, completely new coaching staff, new defense. They lost a lot of talent on defense too. Brian Burns, is he even going to be healthy to start the season? They've got to go through a rebuild similar to the Falcons.
Absolutely.
I think, honestly, they should have started a year ago, and they'd be a lot closer, I think, to where the Falcons are now in their process. But, they're probably going to struggle. They're probably going to look a lot like the Falcons did the last couple of years. I think they'll be a solid team that's just the talent's not quite there, and you got a rookie quarterback. And then you look at the Bucs, probably actively tanking or something close to it. That team's probably going to be a disaster. And then you got the Saints, who I think – they're so cash strapped. They've just been shedding talent for the last 3 years. And a lot of it came to Atlanta. So, how many defensive starters do you lose? You're really depending a lot on Michael Thomas coming back. And I think that's such a bad gamble. It was odd to me to see them go in on Derek Carr to that extent. Are you sure you even have more than one good receiver on your roster? And you have no resources to fix it either. You just keep trading away your picks. So,
yeah, the coaching staff, that's the thing that I would be concerned with the most.
Right, and it's Derek Carr's definitely the best quarterback in the NFC South.
He is.
So you have that, what did it cost you? And is the rest of the team good enough that it'll even matter?
Yeah.
Because that defense, I don't think that defense is going to be able to help them that much anymore. I think it's going to be more of a problem. And in years past, they could always lean on that defense, keeping the score low. And I'm just not sure that that's going to be the case this year anymore.
Well, like you said, even though Carr is the most proven quarterback in that division right now, the thing is if it's almost like they have to win the division this year.
Yeah.
Because if they don't win the division this year with the leg up they have with Derek Carr, then they better fire the coach and bring someone in and do as quick as a rebuild as you can, because you've basically, it's not like you're Derek Carr's 25 years old. So even if you rebuild, which they're going to need to do eventually, like you said, because of their financial situation, the quarterback is there, and the quarterback is not getting any younger. So that's why the future of that division, I totally agree, is with Carolina and Atlanta. So
yeah, and the Saints feel so much like the 2018 Falcons to me, just super top heavy roster, still riding the success of a previous 2 years ago now that was the last time that you were doing a lot in the playoffs, and still thinking that you're that team, but you just keep getting further and further away. You just keep going more and more all in, and it's just not. It just doesn't work. Falcons should have pressed the blown up button way before they did too, but it's hard to do, I'm sure.
Yeah, and they've had the same general manager for 20 years? It's crazy.
Yeah. So,
before I let you go, Kevin, talk about the UDFAs. Which UDFAs do we need to be keeping an eye on that you think have the best chance to make the roster?
Let's see. Yeah, I think the best chance for UDFAs, They didn't sign a lot. They only signed
I wasn't
5 or
like
6 actual
overly.
UDFAs.
Yeah, this wasn't one point where I went, "Wow, they got some really interesting UDFAs." There really aren't that many. Yeah,
it's mostly wide receivers. So that's obviously the place where I think there's the best chance for someone.
Okay.
But the competition is going to be. I think the Falcons are going to keep 5 wide receivers. I think 4 of those spots are set.
Okay.
I know a lot of people don't love the 4 that are there, but I think those guys are more or less set. So
is Darby
they did bring
the 4th?
In, no.
Who's the 4th?
The 4th is Kadarius Hodge.
Oh, it's Hodge.
Kadarius Hodge is the 4th. Yeah. So it's Drake, Mac Hollins, Scotty Miller, Kadarius Hodge.
Okay.
I think is the 4.
Does Hodge offer special teams?
He was like one of the best special teamers in the NFL last year. I
it.
think he had like 9 special teams tackles or something. So he's their star gunner, and honestly, he's a fine depth receiver.
Okay.
But yeah, they got Justin Marshall from Buffalo, Xavier Malone from Henderson State, and Keelan Harris. And those guys are interesting. Like Justin Marshall's that bigger receiver that Arthur Smith seems to like. He's athletic, so a lot of people have him as the favorite. Xavier Malone was like, I think he's like 5'7", but he's like 5'7", 185, so he's thick. He actually is really good after the catch, and it has really great contact balance. I think he ran reportedly in the mid 4.2s. His pro day was not well covered. I mean, he's like I think Division 2 or 3 school. But his tape is really fun. If you go watch Xavier Malone's like Henderson State tape, I think he had like 20 plus yards per reception on like 80 catches.
Okay.
He just dunked on everybody that he played. So I think he's really interesting because of that. Like when you see that much production at any level, it's like, okay, this guy's got something.
Sure.
Extreme speed, and look, if that contact balance is as good as it looked against, Division 2 competition, he'll be, crazy. But if he's just like a better yards after catch threat than you would think for someone who's 5'7", then I think that could lead to him getting a spot. And with that speed, you've got a lot of potential on special teams too. It's just like, can you get the physicality at 5'7"?
So who would you favor then, personally?
I mean, of those guys, it's probably still Justin Marshall, who's like the favorite. But they also signed, you mentioned like Penny Hart. They just brought in J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. They still have Frank Darby, Slade Bolden. I mean, there's like 8 guys competing for that one roster spot. And, probably 2 or 3 will be on the practice squad.
Okay.
So it's going to be a tight competition for wide receiver 5. Will it matter at all in the grand scheme of things? Probably not. But, hey, everybody loves a good wide receiver 5 competition.
Yeah, right.
That's one.
You got to have something in camp to get excited about sometimes. So, especially there's always a position or two. So that'll be definitely one to keep an eye on. The kid from Rice, I'm intrigued by. Can't really pronounce his name.
Ken Enechukwu, I think it is.
There you go. Better you than me.
Yeah.
Anyway, I again not saying anything other than knowing that he had a good career for a pretty bad football team. But yeah, it's not a group that wows you, and that's okay. It doesn't always have to be that way, and I usually like it when it's that way. That means you've got other priorities. Yeah. And
they brought in so many
actual veterans,
and I mean they have a ton. They brought in 3 XFL players, the most of any team.
Who's the best one?
So the best XFL one they got, it's probably like Lucas Dennis, the safety. I forget which team he was on, but I think he was pretty good. So I think he has a legit chance potentially to be like the 5th safety or something like that if he shows out.
Okay. Lucas Dennis, got it. All right. Yeah. So we'll go with Justin Marshall as potentially right now the top UDFA to keep an eye on, but definitely look at those 3 wide receivers competing in camp. For like you said, that one spot. All right. Yeah. So Kevin, always appreciate it. You are right now this time of the season doing what on the YouTube channel? Is this how many days a week?
So we got one live show on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on the YouTube channel Falcoholic Live, and then one podcast a week as well during this time of year. That usually comes out on Monday. And then probably once we get into July, we'll go back to 2 pods a week. But until then, we're probably going to keep it at 1. Just there's just not that much to talk about.
I know. All right, Kevin. Great job as always. Appreciate it. We'll look forward to talking to you before right around training camp before preseason, so we can get a better understanding of what's going on for the Falcons in 2023.
Yep, it's exciting. Can't wait.